We are in Canto 1. This is chapter 3, and today's verse is number 31. Yata nabhasi meghaugho renurva partivo nile evam drashtari drishyatvam aropitam abudhi bihi. Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva partivo nile evam drashtari drishyatvam aropitam abudhi bihi. Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva partivo nile evam drashtari drishyatvam aropitam abudhi bihi. Please chant.
Yatanabasi mega yo renurva partivo nile evam dastari drishyatvam aropitam abudhi.
Hare Krishna. Yatha nabhasi megho renurva parthivo nile evam drashtari drishyatav maropitam buddhi viha. Hare Krishna.
Yatha nabhasi megho renurva parthivo nile evam drastari drishvatvam aropitam buddhibhi. Hare Krishna.
Vijay Bhai.
Hare Krishna. Yatha nabhasi megho renurva parthivo nile evam drashtira dushyatvam maropitam buddhivi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You can go.
Please go ahead, Mataji.
No, you can go.
Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva partivo nile evam drishtari drishyatma aropitam abdudadidhi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva parthivo anile evam drashtari drishyatvam aropitam abuddhibhi. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yata se nabhasi megho renurva parthivo nile eva drastari drishyatvam aropitam abuddhibhi.
Hare Krishna. Yata nabashi magogo ranirva partivo anile evam drishtari drishayatvam aropitam adidibi. Thank you.
Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva parthivo nile evam drishtari drishyatvam aropitam abudhihi.
Yatha nabhasi meghaugho renurva parthivo nile evam drishtari drishyatvam aropitam abuddhibhi.
Anyone else? Okay. Yata, as it is, nabhasi, in the sky. Megha oghaha, a mass of clouds. Renuhu, dust. Va, as well as. Partivaha, muddiness. Anile, in the air. Evam, thus. Drashtari, to the seer. Drishyatvam, for the purpose of seeing. Aropitam is implied. Abuddhibihi, by the less intelligent persons. Translation. Clouds and dust are carried by the air, but less intelligent persons say that the sky is cloudy and the air is dirty. Similarly, they also implant material bodily conceptions on the spirit self. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is further confirmed herein that with our material eyes and senses, we cannot see the Lord, who is all spirit. We cannot even detect the spiritual spark which exists within the material body of the living being. We look to the outward covering of the body or subtle mind of the living being, but we cannot see the spiritual spark within the body. So we have to accept the living being's presence by the presence of his gross body. Similarly, those who want to see the Lord with their present material eyes or with the material senses are advised to meditate on the gigantic external feature called the Virat Rupa. For instance, when a particular gentleman goes in his car, which can be seen very easily, we identify the car with the man within the car. When the president goes out in his particular car, we say, there's the president. For the time being, we identify the car with the president. Similarly, less intelligent men who want to see God immediately, without necessary qualification, are shown first the gigantic material cosmos as the form of the Lord, although the Lord is within and without. The clouds in the sky and the blue of the sky are better appreciated in this connection. Although the bluish tint of the sky and the sky itself are different, we conceive of the color of the sky as blue, but that is a general conception for the layman only. Hare Krishna. So today's verse is referring back a little bit to yesterday's verse, which talked about the Virat Rupa. But then today's verse also expands, comparing the vision of the Virat Rupa, which is, well, in yesterday's verse, it was said it's for the less intelligent neophytes, right? Those who cannot understand the difference between spirit and matter, and those who do not appreciate the eternal nature of spirit. And in today's verse, it continues on to say that in a similar way, that, you know, although the Lord has his form, which is spiritual, and is sometimes seen through material senses as the Virat Rupa, which is described as an imaginary form for the less intelligent neophytes. In a similar way, the spirit soul, who has an eternal form that's unchangeable, indestructible, etc., has this imaginary form over top of it, this material body, and the less intelligent persons identify with it. They see this body and the mind as the self, just like those who can see the material world, and they, you know, that's all they can see of Krishna. Of course, there's nothing but Krishna. Nothing exists outside of Krishna. So everything that we see actually is Krishna. It's just a matter of how we're perceiving that. If we're perceiving that directly and we see, okay, yeah, this is this particular aspect of Krishna, then that's proper vision. But if we're just seeing, you know, trees and mountains and houses and computers and couches and things like that, and we're seeing them not connected to Krishna. We see them connected to ourselves, how they serve us. This couch is comfortable, so I can sit on it for an extended period of time without my legs getting sore. So I appreciate this couch because it serves me, right? I appreciate my neighbor's house that I'm in right now because there's a roof there. So if it starts raining, I don't get wet, and I can plug this computer in with the electricity so I can speak to you all on this Zoom class. These are all things that serve me. And if we see things only with that vision, just how things are serving me, then we don't have the proper vision. I like to point this out because this is a very important misconception that many aspiring devotees have, is that, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out in both yesterday's verse and today's verse, the Virat Rupa, or the universal form of the Lord, is for the less intelligent neophytes. But today's verse sheds a little more light on that and explains how also the less intelligent, they see the body as the self. Just as in the example that Srila Prabhupada gave, if there's a very important person and he drives a very unique car, you'll see the car coming from, very far away. A car's bigger, especially if it's an extravagant, very specific type of car, the colors very unique, and the model that's super expensive, so not many people have it, like that. And we'll see that car and we'll automatically think of the person that's in the car. We identify that car with its owner because, it's a very unique, specific thing. And so that example was given. And so in the same way, we spirit souls who are 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair that are within this body, we actually identify with the body. Even when we see our friends who are also spirit soul, we identify them by their body, by their particular, how we can perceive them through our material senses. And this is also a sign of less intelligence. So the misconception that I want to address today is that a lot of times when we aspiring devotees hear about the universal form, we kind of skip over it. We skip over it. Let's just say we skip over it. I've seen it many times. I've seen it in many different classes. We're going over Bhagavad Gita, for example. You get to the 11th chapter, which is the universal form, and it's like, okay, we could read it, but Arjuna didn't even really want to see it. Like after he saw it, he became fearful, and it spoiled that relationship. And having that relationship with Krishna is so much sweeter. So we don't really even need to spend all this time talking about the universal form, right? And furthermore, if we want to really back our determination to skip this section, when Mother Yashoda saw the cosmic manifestation within her child's mouth, she also didn't like that. It spoiled the relationship. And Krishna didn't like it either because, this devotee who he sees as his mother, because of her love, her deep love for him, he actually sees her, as his mother. The unborn sees a devotee as his mother. And this is an actual, true relationship. So when she saw that, her baby, her child, had the entire cosmic manifestation within his mouth, it sort of messed with her perception, and it challenged that relationship between her and her son, Krishna, right? And so she thought, how foolish am I? I've been treating this boy as my son, but is he the Supreme Lord? Is it possible? But then Krishna took that away from her. No, he didn't like that relationship. He doesn't want his devotees, his intimate devotees like that, to see him in that way. He prefers that intimate relationship. And so we aspiring devotees, when we hear stories like this, we think, no, we just want to focus on the sweet pastimes of Krishna, and have that intimate relationship, because, neither Krishna nor the devotee likes when the pure devotee thinks of Krishna in that way, as the source of everything and like that. And so we justify, and then we're studying Bhagavad Gita, we'll skip the 11th chapter, or we're in Bhagavatam class. And I've seen this in many temples, in many big temples even, that when they're going through the Bhagavatam class, like we're doing now, they go through canto, canto, canto. And when they get to the fifth canto, they'll do the first part of the fifth canto, which, is, Jud Bharat, like that. And, but then when it comes to the cosmic manifestation, I've seen many temples skip that part because they don't really know how to deal with it. And they figure, well, this is for the less intelligent neophytes. We'll just skip that. We're aspiring devotees. So what I want to point out here is, because I also had this idea, honestly, I will admit it. I also had this idea when I would go through these sections. I'd get kind of confused. I'd wonder, what does this have to do with me? Let's focus on those sweet pastimes because they're so much more attractive. And yeah, I was guilty of that. When it became part of my service to study and make student handbooks, study guides for Srimad Bhagavatam, I was actually given the first thing I was given was the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I thought, hey, can I start with anything else, and then I'll get to it. But I don't really want to start there. And they're like, this is what you have to do. This is your service. So I did it kind of reluctantly, not because I didn't want to read or study the fifth canto. I just thought I didn't have the chops for it. I didn't think I was intelligent enough to tackle it in such a way to understand how this actually relates to us devotees, right? Because we're meant to be these intimate devotees. So one thing I like to point out before I go any further, because sometimes even now, just hearing what I'm saying now, devotees might think, well, this really doesn't have much to do with me, and they'll sort of zone out because he's going to talk about the universal form. It's not important. So one thing I want to point out just before I start talking about this is we all know that Krishna is non-different from his name. So when we say Krishna's name, he's right there. Krishna is dancing on our tongue when we're chanting his names. And when we're talking about his pastimes, he's there performing those pastimes right there. We may not actually see it with our eyes, but that's what's happening. Krishna is non-different from his name. He is completely spiritual. So there he is dancing on my tongue. I don't know if you see it or not. I don't see it when I say it. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. No, I don't see it. But some people with transcendental vision, they do. So earlier, before this class, when we were chanting Jaya Radha Madhava, we were talking about some very specific pastimes that Lord Krishna performs, or some general ones that he performs in the area of Vrindavan, by the Yamuna River and through the low canopy forest, like that. How he has interactions with Mother Yashoda and with the gopis, and how he lifts Govardhan Hill. We're talking about all of these things. And so if we were intelligent, if we understood Krishna as he is, when we were singing that song, we would have actually seen those pastimes. We would have seen those pastimes unfolding before our very eyes, watching Krishna run on the bank of the Yamuna and run through the low canopy forest and playing with the cowherd boys. And I personally don't see that when I hear that song. I hear the song and I can kind of maybe picture some of that, but I don't see it. I don't actually see Krishna. And so since we don't see Krishna in these sweet forms spontaneously, it is in our best interest to try to see Krishna wherever we are spontaneously attracted. Because the thing is, we are spontaneously attracted to things, right? It's just not Krishna at the moment. For some of us, we're spontaneously attracted to a certain type of car, maybe, or maybe it's a certain sport, maybe, whether we're playing it or we're watching it, or maybe it's just some sort of movies, some sort of entertainment. But we spend our time doing a lot of things spontaneously. No one has to tell us to do it, but we do it anyway. These are the things that we have spontaneous attachment to, the things that we find ourselves day by day doing without anybody telling us to do it, right? And unfortunately, that's not Krishna that we're actually spontaneously attracted to. For most of us, maybe some of you are spontaneously attracted to Krishna, and I worship your lotus feet, and I wish you give me blessings. But until then, the universal form of Krishna teaches us how to engage our existing spontaneous attachments in the Lord's service. It shows how the things that we're already attached to spontaneously, that we will do without anybody asking us, that the reason we're attracted to those things, it's just an aspect of Krishna's personality. So when we read about the Virat Rupa, the universal form, it's giving us hints on why we like the things we like, why we're attracted to and attached to the things that we are attached to. And it actually reveals that the reason that we're attracted and attached to all of these different material things, they're material because we're seeing them in connection with ourselves. It's actually Krishna's potency that we're appreciating. So when we see that in the proper light by reading about the Virat Rupa, the universal form, and when we can understand which qualities of Krishna we appreciate in the different things that we're attracted to and attached to, then our attraction and our attachment becomes less about how this thing is serving me and how we're appreciating that Krishna has put his potency into this thing to make me feel the way I feel when I'm interacting with this thing that I am attracted to or attached to. And this is one of Krishna's great qualities, that he will stand behind the scenes and not expect any credit whatsoever while giving us these realizations, of how to understand who he is and how to become attracted to him. And so this form, this Virat Rupa, it's way more important to us than we think. We are the less intelligent neophytes in this context, because we only see things through our material vision. We understand in theory who Krishna is, and we can appreciate his pastimes when we're hearing about them. But if during the rest of the day we're not spontaneously attracted to Krishna and his pastimes, we're not constantly thinking about them, then we have to identify, all right, well, the things that I am attached to, I'm going to have to learn how to see how Krishna is there in that, because Krishna is in everything. There's nothing but Krishna, and we have to always remember that. So the Virat Rupa is there for us. Now, I need to point this out, because a lot of times when I'm talking about this, it may seem like I'm trying to get people to actually worship the Virat Rupa and put aside their regular puja or the regular, and I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. We meditate on Krishna, the threefold bending form, playing the flute with a peacock feather in his hair. And he is our worshipable Lord. We just heard this verse a few days ago, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. There's all these different portions and plenary portions, expansions of Krishna. But Krishna, he's the supreme personality of God. He's the original. He's who all the forms, the amsas and all of these different expansions come from him. He's the original. So I'm not trying to say in any way that we should set aside our worship of Krishna to worship the Virat Rupa or to meditate on the Virat Rupa. What I'm saying is that keep doing all of the stuff we're doing for Krishna, but I'm just trying to point out that we're actually meditating on the Virat Rupa, whether we know it or not. The things that we're attached to in the material world that we're seeing as something that serves me, serves my senses, my body, my needs. It's the Virat Rupa, because we have a disconnect. We don't actually see Krishna's hand in it. We may see it in theory, but we don't actually see it. We don't understand it or appreciate it to the extent that we need to become actual spontaneous devotees to serve him personally. So in the meantime, while we are less intelligent neophytes, we should identify and understand that, the things, like I said, the things that we're attracted to and attached to on a daily basis, they are Krishna, and we have to see how they are Krishna. So today's verse spoke about how the air in the sky can carry certain things, and in that way we can see the sky as either dirty, like that, cloudy, dirty, dusty. But the air itself, space, ether, it can't be dirty, and there's no color either. Like the purport said, we can say, and for layman's terms, we can say the sky is blue because you look out there where the sky is and you see a bluishness right now. Sometimes you'll see gray, sometimes you'll see black. Depends on the situation. But the sky itself, it's not blue, gray, or black. It's ether, it's space. It has no color. It carries sound. That's what the nature of ether is. Air gives us the sense of touch. So when there's creation, first, so we'll go from the bottom. So first there's earth. Earth is created, and earth has aroma. You'll remember in Bhagavad Gita, I don't remember which chapter or verse. Maybe someone can say it if they know it, but when Krishna talks about he's the original fragrance of the earth. Anyone know what that is offhand? I am the original fragrance of the earth. If not, no problem. So this means that all fragrances are actually within the earth, and that when we plant a seed, for example, the seed is just pulling that specific fragrance from the earth and then putting it up in whatever form of flowers or fruits or whatever. And so that's where all the aroma comes from. Looks like Vindhyavali Mataji is looking that up. So that's earth. So scent, and then the controlling demigods, the devatas of the sun, I think it's the Ashvini Kumars, they all appear at the same time. Earth, the scent, the nose to perceive that with, and then the controlling devatas. After earth, there's water. With water comes taste. Krishna says, Rasoham apsu konteya, I am the taste of water. And what this means, I am the taste of water, means that he's actually every taste. Without water, we cannot experience flavor. So we can try this experiment. It won't work perfectly, but if we let our tongue dry out as much as possible, obviously our tongue is made also of water, so there's always some water there. But if we let our tongue dry out as much as possible and we put something on it, we can't taste it very well. We can notice that. So if there were no water, we couldn't taste anything. So from earth comes smell, from water comes taste. Earth, water. So then fire. With fire comes form, because without fire, without light, we can't see anything. We can't see the form, the shape of anything. And in that, Krishna says, the sun and the moon are my eyes. We see that in different places, in Bhagavad Gita, also in Srimad Bhagavatam. And what that means, it doesn't mean literally the sun and the moon are Krishna's eyes, so he's looking down at us. I mean, there's that too, but and then when there's an eclipse, he's like cross-eyed. It doesn't mean that. It means that without light, we couldn't see. Without his eyes, our eyes would be useless. So any form of light we have, so you can see the sun coming through the window there, that's an obvious form of light. But even the lights in this room that run on electricity, originally all of that power came from the sun, whether the sun is storing it in wood and then burning later to make fire, or the sun is creating things that then become fossil fuels that then go to these power plants to generate this power. It all came from the sun originally. So it's just a transformation of the solar energy. So when Krishna says the sun and moon are my eyes, he's saying that without my eyes, your eyes would be useless. This is what Krishna's saying. So we can see form because of fire, because of Krishna's eyes. Earth, water, fire. Air gives us the tactile sense. When air moves, then we can actually feel it, right? That's how we can perceive touch. And then ether, sound. The sound wave travels through the ether. It gets to us. And so this is how the elements are created. And we see during the destruction, when everything gets wrapped back up, it all just happens in reverse. First, everything merges into each. It's like these Russian nesting dolls. They go back into each other until it's the Mahat Tattva, the Pradhan, and then they absorb back into the pores of Mahavishnu's body. And that's how material creation works. So it all has to do with Krishna. All of the elements, everything we see, the only reason that we call it false temporary material world or false material world or illusion is because how we perceive it is illusory. We see it as something that serves us as opposed to this is Krishna's expansion, his body. So until we're able to see actually how everything around us is Krishna personally, until we're able to see that, it is in our best interest to understand the Virat Rupa, along with our normal puja, worship, japa, like that. We don't stop that and focus on the, we don't become pantheists, we don't become, anything like that. It's just that, whatever we're attached or attracted to, that we need to understand how or which particular aspect of Krishna's potency we're attracted to. And then we focus on that instead of on how it makes me feel personally, how we appreciate that that's actually Krishna's potency. And that's how we then become attached to Krishna personally. Instead of becoming attached to things that serve us, we become attached to Krishna. And then, of course, when that happens, we become more inspired to read more about him, to learn more about him. And then the spontaneous attachment, that will come to Krishna personally, right? But until then, while our spontaneous attachment lies to the material world, we have to at least understand this Virat Rupa, because we are less intelligent and we are neophytes. Until we understand, we see Krishna everywhere, and we understand that we're not this body, right? That's part of what today's verse was about. It's saying that similarly, those who can only see this external feature of the Lord, the universal form, which isn't counted, by the way, on among those. We just had a previous list of Krishna's different incarnations. The Virat Rupa is not counted in there because it's mostly this material misconception. It is him. It's nothing but him. But since it's so often misconstrued and seen as separate from him, then it's not counted as one of his, these sweet incarnations. But we can certainly see, understand, realize the Lord through them. And we anything that we appreciate in the world, we can understand how that's actually just from part of him. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to make clear. Actually, you know what? I'm going to actually stop early to see if there are any comments, because generally what happens is I don't make something clear, but I'm not sure what it is. And then one of you will point it out and ask. And then, so it actually works better if I'll stop now for questions or comments or additions like that. And we'll see what I missed or what I didn't explain far enough, or, what may have been misunderstood. So are there any questions or comments? Maybe there are not. I don't know if it's because you all agree with what I just said, or if you're all bored because I'm talking about the Virat Rupa.
More.
What's that?
We want to listen you more.
Oh, I can do that too. I can talk all day. So generally there's like 3 more minutes before we do this. So I'll talk more though, if there's nothing else. So generally when I got this understanding, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, by studying the universal form, it's actually great because you're studying the cosmic manifestation, and all of it, when you're reading through Bhagavatam, that section, you're understanding that the universal form, although commonly misconstrued, misperceived as an illusory form, it's presented in such a way that shows that it's actually Krishna personally expanding himself for those renegade spirit souls who are trying to forget him. So it's serving 2 purposes. It's serving those who completely want to forget him, and it's allowing them to forget him. But it's also serving those who are trying, who wanted to forget him, but are now trying to remember him, right? Because everything has its connection with Krishna. So it's not that, we're in the material world, so we're doomed. There's no way we can, perceive Krishna. It's that once we get that mindset, that determination, that dedication and the sincerity to understand who Krishna is, then he just starts, popping up, becoming clear within all of the things that we're already dealing with in the material world. And japa especially helps with that. When we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, this is the Lord Chaitanya called it the Chaito Darpana Marjanam process. It's the process of cleansing the mirror of the heart. So we see the world through this very dusty window, and dust probably isn't even the best word. It's got so much grime. It's, even spray painted. We don't see a thing for actually what it is. We may see some sort of shadow, a very subtle, slight shadow of what's truly going on. But we don't see things clearly. So when we chant Hare Krishna, this window between us and reality becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. So gradually we start seeing shapes take form and color, and we start understanding, oh, this is what this is for. I've been using this wrong my entire life. And so between chanting Hare Krishna and understanding these descriptions of Virat Rupa, because they are important. Bhagavat Purana, by the way, there are many different Puranas. And they all have a different amount of verses. Some of them have the same verses, like the invocation verses. They're all the same, and they all talk about the same pastimes and the same lineages, like that, the solar and lunar dynasty, and they talk about the same things, but they do so in a different way, a different amount of verses, and it's presented slightly differently. The Bhagavat Purana is, so Srila Vyasadeva, in his maturity, once all the other Puranas were compiled and he was feeling a little bit despondent, his guru Narad Muni said, okay, you've done a good job presenting the Vedas, but some people might be distracted by what you gave them, because you're encouraging sense gratification in the name of religion, which you have to do at some point, because you're starting with people like me who were born in a gutter, and all we know is sense gratification. So you gotta speak in my terms. Oh, it's sense gratification, okay. And then oh, by the way, you have to engage that in Krishna service. Oh, okay, all right, I get it. So then gradually we can be lifted up, we become elevated. So it's not that Srila Vyasadeva did the wrong thing by talking about how to engage sense gratification in Krishna consciousness. That was the right thing to do. But at some point, when devotees become more and more serious, they want to focus completely on Krishna consciousness. And so for that purpose, this Bhagavat Purana was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva after he had that realization, that conversation with his guru. So every single verse in this Bhagavat Purana is talking about service, direct service to Krishna. Even the sections that sometimes we don't understand and we want to skip. There's a section in the second canto that talks about the universal form. Like I said, half of the fifth canto is about the cosmic manifestation, how it comes into being. And it comes up in a lot of other different places as well. And so it's something that we have to understand, especially for us, because like I said, we're not spontaneously attracted to Krishna as of yet. And until we are, we have to understand how the things that we are spontaneously attracted to are actually nothing but Krishna. And in that way, we can figure out which aspects of Krishna's personality are attractive to us in the things that we're attached to. And instead of, being self-centric with that appreciating that because it serves me, then we can redirect that consciousness to God-centric, appreciating it because we understand how God likes to work, how he likes to interact with his devotees, how he expands himself in different ways for the different spirit souls, even the ones that wanted to forget him. And so, yes, this becomes a much more dynamic, much more easy process when we can wrap our heads around this. So we definitely shouldn't try to skip over these things. We should definitely fully understand them, because that's where we are. Most of us are in this less intelligent neophyte stage. And until we can start appreciating Krishna within everything, this is something that we have to pay at least some attention to. Not full attention. I want to, again, make that clear. I can't say that enough. We don't want to drop the rest of our service to meditate on the Virat Rupa. We don't want to become impersonalists, but we have to understand that the Virat Rupa, although it seems impersonal to most people, because Krishna literally put we wanted a veil between us and Krishna, so he gave it to us. So in one sense, it's impersonal because we see the material world through our eyes. But in the other sense, it's very personal because Krishna expanded himself because we had that desire. And so it's his personal expansion that we see impersonally. So if we can actually see it that way, that the way it truly is, a personal expansion for impersonalist thinkers, then that can help us progress on the path of devotional service. Dronacharya Prabhu, I see you have your hand up. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Caruchandra Prabhu. I really appreciated this class. Very thought-provoking. I too, when it comes to the universal form, oftentimes it's fascinating, but it's kind of like I always feel like, okay, you just move through it to get to Krishna, the personality. So I can definitely relate to that. So I was thinking of how can we use, I guess, this form of Krishna, the Virat Rupa, to preach. Is there a way? Is there a group of people that this would become maybe more attractive to than, say, Krishna is the Supreme Personality? Whether it be like environmentalists or people that are just nature goers, or maybe people that have you given any thought to that? Is there a use for this Virat Rupa in the movement?
Absolutely. So first I'll address the way you're thinking of it, and then I'll address another way to think of it. So the way you're thinking of it is, basically you could preach to those who are pantheists, like Native Americans, for example. They see God in nature. And so the way you're thinking of the universal form currently, right now, in asking that question, you can preach to those people and show how, you're worshiping God in nature, but then he also has this personal form, and this is his expansion. So we can bring people who are already, pantheistic to more of a monotheistic mindset. So that's one thing. And that's a pretty rare thing. But the thing that we can use this in preaching to everyone, absolutely everyone, is just like I was saying earlier, that we, rebellious spirit souls, are spontaneously attracted to matter, to things. And it's all different things. It's not that, all our attractions are all the same, but we all have attractions and they're all self-centered. And the Virat Rupa, what it does is, so the first part, like what you were thinking about, it's starting with the universal form and figuring out how to relate that to people. And that's just a niche group. That's a small group, who can relate to that. But everybody can relate to the Virat Rupa form, not in its entirety, but in a specific way. So whatever we are attracted to, spontaneously, whatever we find ourselves doing on a daily basis without anybody asking us, telling us, or that, we're completely, we're just attached to it. That is an aspect of Krishna. And what we have to do is, through the descriptions of the Virat Rupa, find out what exactly it is about Krishna's personality that is attracting us to this thing, right? And so what we're doing essentially is we're taking our material attachment and turning it into a spiritual attachment. And that's what Srila Prabhupada talks about when he says, you don't have to change anything except for your consciousness. You can do the same things, you just do it with the proper consciousness. And Virat Rupa helps us understand how to do that, how to change that consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes, very, very interesting. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to point out, you might have more here, but it reminded me, the first thing that you said about how you were relating to the fact that when the Virat Rupa comes up, it's we sort of go through it. Another thing I wanted to point out, especially since it relates to today's verse, is that when we read through Srila Prabhupada's lectures, and even through its purports, we see that he's very often, like 80% of the time, talking about how we're not the body, right?
Right.
Always giving class about not the body, 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 not the body. And after a while, we start thinking, no, I know I'm not the body, spirit, soul. I understand. I get it. Like, let's go on to more. But the thing is, we don't know that we're not the body. We know it in theory, but if we look at our daily activities, we very much identify with the body. So it bears repeating, right? And so in a similar way, this talk about the Virat Rupa, it also bears repeating until we fully understand, until we fully get it. We understand in theory that we're not the body. We understand that we're eternal spiritual beings and this body's temporary, so we can't possibly be this body, right? But, we certainly act as if we're the body. Something happens to it and we're miserable, and somebody does something to even hurt our feelings, which is the subtle body, and we become very affected by that. We're definitely identifying with the body. So these things bear repeating until we understand it, and we won't understand it if we think we already understand it. That's the point. We think we know it, but we don't. So if we, instead of just seeing these things in a in like a detailed sense, like you have to know you're not the body and tell people they're not the body, and those are details. The principle is we have to understand how we're not the body, understand how we're spirit, soul, and understand how, what the actual relationship is, because only then will we truly understand and act as though we are not the body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Did you have something else? Sorry if I cut in.
No. You answered my question very.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Suman Sharma also has a hand up, please. If you're talking,
I think you're on mute.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice class, and it makes us think deeply. So I'm thinking that the purport is the second, it says second line, we cannot even detect the spiritual spark which exists within the material body of the living being. So how can we explain to someone that there is a spiritual spark within us? Because I do not have any deep knowledge. If I have to explain to someone there is a spiritual spark within us, how can we explain it to someone?
That's a great question. Thank you. So the way Srila Prabhupada would explain this is that, the body is made up of different chemicals, right? And when you compare a live body to a dead body, all of the chemicals are there. That's the same. So something left. And that's what was animating the body. And that's the spirit soul. So although it can't be perceived, like under a microscope, it can be perceived in its symptoms of life. And so some people might argue, well, that symptom of life, it's also just some sort of chemical reaction, right? And they do argue that. But the problem with that is they've tried to recreate that spark of life in labs for many, many, many hundreds of years, and they can't do it. So just by the symptom of life, we can understand that there's a spiritual spark, and that it's different from the material body. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. It's like Ram Sham has his hand up.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Bhagavatam Purana, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Prabhuji, as you mentioned, like, and Krishna said, I am the fragrance in the flower, and like that. And yeah, I'm completely agree with that. And I just wanted to get clear. In the vegetables, in the fruits, those all, like the juices and all comes from the moon. So is that Krishna through the moon, like pervading that, or just how to understand, Prabhuji? Please clarify.
Yes, absolutely. Everything is done by Krishna through different agencies. So yeah, when we hear about how the vegetables, they receive their energy from the moon, yeah, it's coming through the moon, but it's from Krishna. So, and that's everything. So even if, say for example, you need money for something to pay off a bill, and somebody gives you that money, that's actually Krishna giving you that money. It's not that person. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of Krishna. So the fact that we're breathing, we want to breathe. So we put that request out there, like, hey, it'd be nice if I could keep breathing, because then this body will stay this body, and this soul won't have to transmigrate to somewhere else. But it's not up to us. That's up to Krishna. Everything is up to Krishna. So even though it'll come through different agencies, it's all coming from Krishna.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Prabhuji, for clarifying.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else? There tends to be not very many questions when it comes to the universal form. Well, sometimes there are, but
I like that universal form all the time. I don't know, for some reason, Prabhu. Whenever I think of Krishna, and sometimes, and then when I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know, whether I see a nice, beautiful flower, beautiful nature, any trees, green trees and greenery nature, I always think of Krishna. Good. I said, without him, how can we get all these things? So the other day, somebody sent their backyard flowers, all kinds of flower pictures from New Jersey. So I just sent her text, I told her, without Krishna, how can we enjoy all this beauty? So I feel all that, and sometimes I see an insect on the tree, and then our bee is getting the honey from the flower. All those things, I always think of Krishna. I don't know whether it is, I don't know whether I'm doing right or not. I enjoy that way. And this universal form, really, sometimes it is scary also, the way he shows. But sometimes I think, oh God, like Sodama, a few minutes she was scared, but she said, oh God, you have all this inside. And how many things he is taking care. We cannot take care of one child, or we cannot take care of one husband like that in this universe. So how many things he is taking care. There is one thing, it's really amazing. So I always think that way only. Nothing else I have, but a beautiful class. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So I just want to just to recap, because a lot of times we sort of can get lost in, there are a series of facts, but we don't always necessarily make a full connection. So just to recap, since we have time, is that if we're not spontaneously attracted to Krishna, then the things that we are spontaneously attracted to, materially, we have to see how those are part of Krishna. Then once we see that, once we appreciate that, our appreciation of Krishna enhances and develops, and then we become spontaneously attracted to Krishna. So just like Arjuna and Mother Yashoda, eventually this, seeing Krishna as everything, that it was actually an inhibitor to their true relationship. So eventually also it'll be the same for us. It'll be where we'll have to leave that concept behind. But in the meantime, while we are attracted to the material world spontaneously, we have to see what part of Krishna am I attracted to here? And why is this, why am I doing this automatically without anybody telling me to? And when we see that it's actually because of Krishna's potency, and how we're actually just appreciating that, even though we're doing it for our own senses, then we'll start appreciating, just how he does these things. And then eventually, yes, we will just, that concept of, the universal form, it won't even be in our heads anymore. But until we get to that point, we have to see it. We have to do that. We can't expect to just one day spontaneously be Krishna's mom or his girlfriend or his, his childhood friend. That doesn't happen until we become attracted and then attached and then, like steady first. So these things happen. Oh, my computer's doing something strange. Sorry.
And also I want to add, Krishna said, you cannot see me with the present eyes in chapter, universal form.
Yes.
I'll give you the divine eyes where you can see my mystic opulence.
Yeah.
So we cannot see Krishna with our present eyes. We just need to purify ourselves so that we can see, especially the universal form. So that's what I want to add.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah. That's why I tried to point out that through Shastra, through reading about the universal form, that's how we can figure out how the things that we're already attracted to in the material world are actually him. It's not that we just try to, whimsically make some sort of connection because we know in theory there's a connection. No, it's actually, we see through Shastra how that's actually Krishna and what aspect of him that is. So then we can understand, okay, that's what I appreciate. And then every time we're dealing with that from then on, once that connection's made, then we're actually seeing Krishna in that thing, right? And then it's like, hey, now what's the next thing? And then you just go down the list. So it's like first you do your main attachment, the thing that you spend most of your day on, the biggest block of time that you spent. Figure out how that's actually the reason you're attracted to that is actually because you're attracted to Krishna. Figure that out, make the connection through the Virat Rupa. And then that attachment's now gone. It's no longer a material attachment. Now it's actually helping you toward your spirituality because it's bringing you to Krishna. Because now you're attracted to the fact that it's Krishna's quality, not that it's doing something for you. And then you go, okay, now what's my second biggest attachment? Because that one's taken care of. We're good now. And then, so that's what we are meant to do in our lives. That is Krishna consciousness. It's taking our self-centric mentality of seeing something as how it serves me and redirecting that from Shastra, from understanding, the Virat Rupa and Krishna's other forms like that, and then redirecting that consciousness to see how, okay, this is how it serves Krishna. And then once we always use it in that way, then, we move on. And the process actually becomes very quick and easy after that, once we make those connections, because then we're starting to understand who Krishna is, what kind of person he is. And Krishna is the type of person where when you understand who he is and what type of person he is, you automatically fall in love with him. You have no choice. He's the most lovable person there is, So, and that's how it works. And it seems strange because we're talking about how the universal form, the Virat Rupa, who are for the unintelligent neophytes, can lead to spontaneous devotion. But it actually can if you do it in the right way, if you make those connections. But yeah, Shastra is a super important part of that, to see how those things are connected.
I want to add something in this connection.
Yeah.
In Mahabharata, Sanjay was able to see the Krishna's universal form, and he was explaining it to Dhritarashtra. So when Krishna was showing his universal form to Arjun, then Sanjay was telling that he was showing the universal form to Arjun, and he was explaining it to Dhritarashtra. So he was that blessing. Sanjay had that benediction too, that he was able to see the universal form.
Yes.
So
yes, that not only for Dhritarashtra's benefit, but also for our benefit, so we can understand what was happening. But yes, Sanjay had this special vision where he didn't have to be somewhere to see it. He could see things going on, and he would tell Dhritarashtra, who was blind, he would tell him what was going on.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
I may not be the elevated person, I am not, but I'm thankful to Krishna that he has given me ears and eyes in this body, and I am using for these classes, and then seeing all the Krishna's creations in the world. So everything I feel like that. So I'm really thankful to that. I don't know, this body I may not be liking, I'm not this body, but he has given these ears and eyes for me to at least think that capacity.
Yeah, we have all of the right tools to get us back to our eternal relationship with Krishna. We just have to use them the right way. And currently we're using them in the wrong way. We're
Wrong.
to serve our senses. But if we when we make that conscious effort, and that determination to only use all of these tools to serve Krishna, then everything becomes so much easier. So yes, if we use our eyes just to see the form of the Lord, we use our ears to hear about his pastimes. We have verses like this, prayers of different great personalities.
Chanting Krishna at mouth.
Yeah, may my mouth always be
chanting.
May he always be dancing in my heart. Everything about it. If
I have to thankful everything.
If something's not connected, then we curse it.
That's true.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just one question flashed to my mind, like in Sikshastakam, like we read through, like we should take the birth after birth to worship Krishna. But sometimes when we go through, we try to get the kind of liberation. So when we get the liberation, so how can we serve Krishna? So, and in the body, when we come in this body, we get so much of misery. And when I again coming to the Sikshastakam, when we are saying that when we will get this body, then we'll serve the Krishna. So how to understand this?
Thank you. That's a good question also. Because in the material world right now, we're miserable because we're an eternal being in a temporary situation. And so it's miserable. A devotee, a pure devotee, is no longer miserable because his consciousness is completely spiritual. So he's not bothered by the pangs of the body. And so a pure devotee is willing to take birth after birth in order to help others who, like him, were suffering in the material world. And so it's not that he has to stay, but he's willing to. He's willing to stay and preach, birth after, as long as he's able to keep that consciousness that Krishna is everything and I'm his servant. As long as we have that consciousness, then we're not actually bothered by the material pangs. Now, externally, it may appear that we are. Our bodies will get old and they will die. They will become diseased even. But the consciousness, it's not, because then at that point when we're pure devotees, we're identifying with the spirit soul, not with the body. And so whatever troubles the body is going through, it doesn't affect the self. Just like, if a car gets into an accident, but if we're safe inside, we're fine. We may be upset because, we paid a lot of money to get the car, but then that means we're attached to the car, we're identifying with the car. But if we're not identifying with the car, if we understand that we are separate from the car, then, it's fine. Car got crushed, we're okay. So a pure devotee isn't affected by the miseries that the body goes through, whether it's the gross body or the subtle body even. So he won't even, he doesn't even get insulted when people, we have this, we got the gross body, but we also have the subtle body. So sometimes if people criticize us, we become, we become so hurt and affected. Why did they say that thing about me? That's just downright awful. But a pure devotee also doesn't identify with that subtle body. So you can hear criticism, and it doesn't mean a thing. But if someone criticizes another devotee or Krishna, then that pure devotee spirit soul may do something about it, right? But no, they don't take offense. It's like I guess it's described. I think it's early on. Somewhere between the first and third canto, but it talks about how the inside of a fruit can be separate, or the inside of a coconut can become separate from the coconut. And so when a devotee becomes detached from mind, that's actually separate, right? And so, yeah, and that's what we're meant to do. So once we have that consciousness and we see Krishna everywhere, then all we want to do is serve him. And we don't care if it's in another body or if it's in the spiritual world. If we're serving him, we're serving him. It's spiritual consciousness. We're not suffering. So some devotees just keep coming back to preach. Srila Prabhupada, he came here to preach. That's what he was doing. So yeah, that's what that means when we say, you know, we're willing to stay in this material world, birth after birth after birth, as long as we have Krishna as our Lord, and we always have that remembrance. Is that good?
Nice, really, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. It really helps, Prabhuji. Your clarification is very nice. Thank you so much.
Wonderful class. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very interesting.
So I think
okay, everyone. Thank you very much, Caruchandra Prabhu. It's a really nice discussion that was generated from your class. Thank you to all the devotees for tuning in and listening. And we'll see everyone tomorrow for Chaitanya Charitamrita. Our gratitude to you, Caruchandra Prabhu. Be well.
Thank you very much.
Seeing you soon again.
Right.
Okay.
Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.